I want to start with a higher level question. You built the business slowly. You were working full time, raising a family, and truly figuring things out along the way, taking one step at a time, which is so refreshing. And I feel like we live in this day and age where it's so easy for us to compare ourselves and think, I'm not at her level. I'm not in all the Nordstroms and I'm not moving fast enough. So if someone who is listening in is starting their business and is just starting out, what do you wish that they knew about not rushing things and not being on that quote unquote fast track that we think success happens with?
So my biggest thing, I say this a lot, is slow and steady wins the race, and you need to go at your pace. I think about all the time. Obviously, I'm older, right? So, I'm 56 years old, and what I would have done to have done this like 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, I could have potentially crashed and burned, right? So I have to think about it like now is the time for me. And yeah, do I wish I was younger and maybe I did some things a little bit faster? But there's so much I'm learning every day still. And I love learning, but it's going at your pace because that's what you're going to feel comfortable with. You don't want to burn yourself out. You want to go at a pace fast enough where you're moving the needle, right? Because the idea of building a business, once you get it off the ground, is to grow the business. So you have to keep up with the times, but that in itself is enough to keep you busy, right? So just, when it feels right for you. And, of course, my initial reaction was, hey, I wanted to get into Nordstrom's and I want to get into major department stores and Bloomingdale's and all these different places. And sometimes those came right away. And sometimes even I said no to them. So you have to go when it's right for you.
Yeah. And I love that you said, it's like making sure you're setting up the building blocks. Like you're busy, you're still having momentum. But sometimes I feel like when you get into that retail store in year one, like there's so much you're still learning with the fundamentals that you might crash and burn, or it might not be the right next step. So it's like going on your own pace, whatever that looks like, is key. And we had another guest on the podcast. This was a few years ago, the founder of Mary Ruth Organic. She also has a big company and she always says the same thing. She's like, slow and steady wins the race. So I try to remind myself that all the time because, as entrepreneurs, you can be impatient with certain things. You want things done, which is a great quality, but you have to balance it with like, you can't force everything. It's like slow and steady. You love the game. You're not going anywhere. So what's the rush to the finish line? So I love that.
Exactly. And some of these stores, there's no perfect playbook to going into all of these stores. Every one of them is different. They have different requirements. And, you open yourself up to so much liability. Like everybody wants to rush in, let's call it a Target. Everybody wants to rush into Target, but Target is a beast and it's hard to one, get into Target. We were lucky that Target reached out to us, but then getting in there it's so much to navigate. And if you're not ready for that, you're going to be hit with chargebacks. You may be dropped. You may not be welcomed back. So you have to make sure that you have the ability. And even with the team that I've built now, I mean, in 2023, I had 5 people working for Bogg Bag. And we were a $50 million business at the time, 5 people. And, now we have over 100 and we still don't always get it 100% right. So you have to make sure that you're going in and learning everything you can before you take that big leap.
Wow. I mean, we're going to get into your story, but I can't help but ask a question now because I'm so curious. So you had 5 people in 2023 and you said you're now over 100 in
Right.
2025.
Yes.
What really shifted that scale? Like, were you only direct to consumer in 2023? And then that's a massive growth.
Yeah.
I'm excited to dig more into it, but what caused that?
Well, let me be fair. So we had 5 people in an office, right? So all of our operations were run off of 5 people. That was sales, that was marketing, that was finance, that was accounting, and anything that filled in there. And then we did have some warehouse people. When I say 100 now, that's including the warehouse people. So it's kind of not fair to say that. Our warehouse team is pretty large, but yeah, as far as actioning these items, getting into these stores and being able to navigate all of that, there were 5 people.
Wow. And we'll talk about that growth. I'm like, there's so much to talk about. The early days of Bogg, the later days, there's so much stuff. But, going back to the very early days, you didn't come from like a fancy business background. You see in other interviews, you barely made it out of high school. But even back then, you had this hustle. You were selling gum. You were like buying domain names in lunch during your lunch breaks. Like, where do you think that drive came from?
Honestly, for me, the drive came from, I didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I lived in a very nice town where a lot of people had a lot of things and I didn't. And my goal was that, two things was financial security. Like I wanted to be in control of my destiny. I was never one of the girls who was like, oh, I dream to marry a guy and he's going to take care of me for the rest of my life. I was like, I can marry a man and I can have children and I can do all these things, but I don't want anybody to ever tell me what I can do with my money when. I wanted that financial security. And that started at like such an early age. I started working so young, and building that up and learning things along the way about finances and interest rates, things that we should be teaching more to our children, right? So that was the ultimate goal was to, and of course it was to make $1 million, right? Like who doesn't want to, what little girl doesn't want to grow up and make $1 million? So all of those things kind of played a role.
It's so interesting because I had a similar experience. My parents are divorced and they're good friends, and they both drilled in my mind exactly what you said. Like, you always have to be financially independent, always be on your 2 feet. Did you get that from your parents or just being around that community? You said you didn't have that much money, but you're in an environment where you were. So you saw what was possible and you were like, I want to be financially independent.
Yeah, I was a product of a divorce as well. My father left when I was very, very young. My mother remarried when I was 9, and my mother didn't have that sense of. And hopefully, she doesn't watch this because I love my mother to death, but she never had a sense of financial security. And I still even think in her later years, she never really had that. And it's heartbreaking to see. Like, I just, I don't want to ask permission to spend, to do something that I want to do. Right. So these are the things that I looked at. And part of it was watching my mother struggle. Right. I don't want to struggle. And if I had a daughter, I didn't want them to ever have to struggle. So I just started building that on my own.
Yeah, that resonates a lot. It's like, how lucky are we to have seen that and be in our generation of like, okay, I don't want to live this way, or I want to be on my own or be financially independent to make my own decisions and not have to wait for anyone or anything. So it's always so interesting to kind of understand the psychology behind that. But, fast forwarding a little bit, you were juggling kids, beach gear, snacks, and the idea for Bog Bags hit you. And I'm just curious because you had a stable life at the time. You had a, stable career, you had a full life. Like, where did that idea kind of come from? And when was a turning point where you're like, I think I want to do this?
Yeah, it was actually really quick, in 2008. So it's a long time. My kids were younger, very active, and where my family has a house on the Jersey Shore, it was a full day affair to go to the beach. So you were carrying everything that was going to last you from 8 a.m., 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., 6 p.m. at night. So you had to carry a lot of things. We also have beach badges. So you were contending with beach badges and making sure we didn't lose those in the sand. So there was a whole bunch of things. I'm an obsessive coffee drinker, so I was constantly spilling coffee on my cute little bags. So I would buy a J. Crew, a Tory Burch, something straw. Like none of these were conducive to going to the beach with kids. They were cute for me, but they didn't work. And what I found was that, shoes, I mean, there's the obvious comparison. Everybody always compares us to Crocs, but we did have Crocs for my boys, but we also had flip flops that were made of EVA and all of these different things. That EVA is the material that our bags are made of. So, once I started, I actually had a pair of Crocs in my hand, was just playing with it and stretching it out. And it was like, it would get this kind of like warm feeling, but didn't get hot. And it would kind of have this little bit of play to it, this stretch to it. And it was just like always right there. And if it got dirty, we could rinse it off. And my husband and I were sitting on the beach and going, this is what a beach bag should be made out of. This is the material. Now, I was probably, 14 domains in, 55 ideas before this even came up. But this is the farthest I took it. Initially, the idea was never, I was reading millionaire mommy books. I was reading all these books. And quite frankly, like I'm writing my own book because it's almost like, I wanted something. I don't know if you have kids, but when you do, I'm sure everybody will tell you to read What to Expect When You're Expecting.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And What to Expect When You're Expecting was so honest. And it was like these weird things would happen to your body. And you're like, oh my God, is something wrong with me? And am I an alien? Like what's happening to me right now? And then you would go into this book and you're like, okay, I'm at 8 weeks. And 8 weeks, it would be like, okay, this is going to happen. And you're like, holy crap. Like, oh my God, like she's right. This happened to me. So I want that to be more of the story that I tell, right? Like things that actually happen to you and the truth behind them. It's not about coming up with an idea, patenting it, getting it out to market, making $1 million and you're done. It's so much more than that. So anyway, the idea initially was never I had no manufacturing background. I was in commercial real estate lending and I was there because I landed there because wherever I worked, I did a great job. So I started there answering the phones and ended up being their controller after 26 years, just because I would immerse myself in what I was doing. But in this particular case was I do have a job. I do have two kids. My husband's a police officer. He works 12-hour shifts. Like I can't take on this project, but I do firmly believe in it. So the idea was, let me get it patented because, you hear that enough. Get a patent, get a patent. And I started that process, went down that road. And then once I was secure in that I had some kind of protection for it, I started shopping it out. I went into the city. I went to a couple of handbag manufacturers and designers and sellers. And, it was very male dominated. And they didn't get my vision. They were like, it's too utilitarian. You'll never need more than one. I don't get it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, what do I do now? Like, people don't like the idea, but I really felt strongly about it. Um, so I wanted to reach out to a Crocs or another company that was already established. And maybe I would sell it for $50 million. And I would just make up numbers in my head, like nothing. I had no, reporting or anything that could tell me anything. I would just make up numbers in my head. So $50 million was the number I had. And I based that on because Gibbets, the little things that go into the holes of the Crocs, had done a $20 million deal with Crocs, like right
Okay,
around that time. So that
gotcha.
was my basis. I'm like, okay, well, 20 million for this, it's got to be 50 million for this, right? For the size.
Yeah, the size relatively. I
Right.
love it.
Relative to a gibbet. Yeah. I mean, it made sense in my mind at the time. So let's go with it. And yeah, I tried to reach out and I couldn't get anybody on the phone. And then when I did finally get somebody on the phone from one of these companies, I said, I just need 5 minutes to show somebody something. I had drawings, I had a rough prototype. And the response was, we pay people to come up with ideas. We have a research and development team of 200 people. I might be making that up. I don't know if they said 200 people, but in my mind, it was like that. And I said, well, you know what? Maybe I'll make it myself then. And it was, basically like, well, yeah, good luck with that. And I was like, so here I am. I'm from Jersey. So I'm like, good luck. I'm like, bitch, I'm going to make this bag. Like, I will make this bag, whether it kills me. And it almost has a few
It-
times,
yeah.
but that was okay, now I have to realize that I have to figure all of this out from scratch because I don't know anybody in this world. I don't know how to do this. And I had to understand every aspect myself before I would continue on to the next level.
And kind of going back a little bit. So it seems like you had this idea. You were someone that was always thinking about ideas. You mentioned you had like 50 other ideas. So this was just like normal way of life for you of
Yeah.
just thinking about problem solving. What could we bring? But for whatever reason, this idea really stood out to you. And when you were, your first phase is like, how do I even build this? I don't have a network. Let me see if somebody can do it for me. And, how long was that period? Like a year of you just exploring doing the trademark or sorry, the patent.
Yeah, so that, I mean that ended up taking a couple of years actually because you have to wait back, but I started in the meantime. So the first main thing was, hey, where do I find a manufacturer? Because I knew I had to find a manufacturer. And uh, I was talking to my neighbor who happened to have been from China, and while he said he didn't know anybody, he introduced me to somebody else, and then I started talking with them. So within I'd say within the second year, I was already talking to a manufacturer and we were working on drawings and specking it out and doing all these things that I had no idea how to do. But we were moving forward. But again, I wasn't in a rush. Plus, I didn't have the money. So it was like, when can I pay for this? And what money can I use to pay for this for right now? And then, I was counting on my holiday bonuses that I, had gotten every year for however many years. Like, so my holiday bonus, which should have been going to savings and maybe making an extra mortgage payment, was going to patent attorneys and the manufacturer for samples. So I was just doing it as I could do it.
And along the way, because you mentioned, you had so many rejections, and this is probably just a simple question, but it seemed like you were so strong in the idea. Did you have friends around you who were cheering you on and they're like, Kim, this is brilliant? Or you just knew in your gut, like, I'm a mom. I want this. I feel very strongly about this idea. And that's what's really pushed you through these years in those early days.
Most of it was gut intuition, and then the support of my husband too. My husband was super supportive. He loved the idea for the bag. When the first actual sample came in, I was at work and he called me up and he's like, I just saw the coolest thing I've ever seen. You have to come home. I'm like, I can't come home. Like, are my kids okay? If my kids are okay, I got to go back to work. But I came home that night and saw it. And then it's like, as it continued to progress, the confidence level got more because even when we started bringing in, like the first time I brought in product was 300 pieces and I sold them locally. So is it friends and family buying it because they feel bad for you because you're spending all this time and money on this, or do they really see the value in it? So you really don't get that read until you're kind of outside of your area, your comfort zone and your people to really get that read on it.
Yeah, I love that. I love your husband just being so supportive. Like it really can make such a difference. A friend, a partner, or just your network of people.
Oh yeah, for sure. He gave up on telling me no or questioning me like many, many years ago. Now it's like you do whatever you want to do.
I love it. That's the way to be. So you mentioned, you were trying to simultaneously, you're trying to figure out a manufacturer. I love that you were talking to your neighbor because that's like kind of how it happens. People are always like, how do I find the right person? I mean, even for my business, it was talking to a friend who then introduced me to someone who knew someone. So it's like just getting that going. So you finally find a manufacturer. You mentioned you did that smaller batch of 300 bags. How did you fund that, right? You were saying like every bonus you were putting towards something. So tell me more about how you funded it and what that moment was like, because it was probably the first biggest investment that you did for the company.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I done smaller things. My bills were bigger and I was, paying them off in pieces as money became available. Once I started getting into buying product, I did dip into the kids' college funds. And we took a pension loan from my husband's pension. So there were things that we did that, I just always had in the back of my mind the confidence that like I'll make it up somehow. And I used to joke with my husband, I said, well, what happens if we can't make it up? And I said, well, I was a good waitress back in the day. Like I can always go back to waiting tables at night. Like I never worried about being able to make up what I had lost.
I love that. And it seems like you've always had this confidence in yourself that I can make money. Like I can make something work. You had that confidence. So the risk was there, but you're like, I'll figure it out, whether it's this or something else, which I think is really big. And also maybe a positive of having work experience under your belt, right? Because you build that confidence the older you are. You're in different situations. You said you became a controller, you really moved up the ranks, and you're like, oh, well, I didn't study this, but I'm a hard worker. I'll figure it out. So,
Right. I knew that my work ethic would always be able to carry me through any situation. So I think that was important for me. Had I had a poorer work ethic, then, obviously it would be more nerve wracking because like, then it would be like, I just need to go to work and get my paycheck and go home.
yeah. And there wouldn't be bogs. I mean, like you need the craziest work ethic, especially how long you kept your job doing this on the side, which, I definitely want to talk about in a little bit because I think that's important too. So yeah, I feel like if you don't have that work ethic, you're out real fast in business. So good luck. Okay. So you got these 300 bags. You said you were locally, selling it. It seems like it did pretty well for the most part. And I'm going to fast forward a bit, but it looked like in 2011, so not that much later, you had a pretty big setback. Tell me more about that because things are like going well. You know, you still have your full time job, but you're making progress. Your husband's excited. You have these products, you're selling it. And then another phase of the business kind of happens in 2011. So, can you kind of walk us through why that was a difficult time for you?
Yeah, sure. So, getting the manufacturer, getting the 300 pieces and selling them out, I then went and purchased 600 pieces, which was, double the stress. But I had sold out of the 300 so fast that I figured the same phenomenon should happen, right? So let's order 600. And it did. I sold out of those immediately. I started doing some trade shows. I had store orders. I really wasn't focusing on e-com at the time. One, because I just didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how the e-com, um, beast ran, and I didn't know how to create a website and do all these things. So I really was focusing on, hey, how do I get it into stores and into people's hands that way? I also thought very early on, it's a touch and feel product, right? So I want it to be seen. So I went for broke and ordered and that was the largest amount of money I spent was on a full container of product, which was 1,200 pieces. And, the first two had come in. Listen, there were some manufacturing issues. I couldn't sell every single one of them. There were some that I pulled aside and I'm like, yeah, this is not good enough to sell. I had always envisioned it as Nordstrom's bag. So how am I going to sell this? So I would pull those aside and we would use those for samples or whatever the case was. So this 1,200 comes in. I don't have a warehouse at this point. I have an extra space storage unit and it's coming in at midnight in a huge container and it's pitch black and I don't have a loading dock. And my friends and family came and they helped me. And we unloaded these boxes and it was fun. Like we had a great time. And as we're starting to move them into the extra space storage unit, I started opening up the box just out of pure excitement. I'm like, oh, wow. So I'm opening up the boxes and I started noticing right away that they had black streaks on them. So the functionality of the bag was great. The colors were beautiful. But what I would learn later on that it was a manufacturing issue. So when they were changing the color, they weren't cleaning the barrel that held the material. So the prior color was burning off, causing like a fleck, and it would cause these black streaks. And I mean, I would find one out of like 10 bags that was good. Um, and my heart sank because now it was like, oh my God, what? I'm embarrassed. I'm mortified. I just spent the rest of the money that we have. Like, how am I going to move forward from this? Not only that, what the hell am I going to do with all these bags? So it was shortly after we received that shipment, Sandy hit the Jersey Shore, and more specifically, it hit where my family's house was. And houses were wiped off the foundation. I mean, it was terrible there. It was so bad. People couldn't get into their homes for the longest time. And we started thinking about one, how can we help the Jersey Shore? And then the idea clicked like maybe we can use Bogg Bag as the vehicle to hand out supplies to people as they re-enter their homes on the Jersey Shore. So we got special permission from the governor and the mayor and the chief of police down there. And we said, hey, we'd like to come and set up. So my husband's PBA did a drive and our neighbors did a drive and we would collect bleach and gloves and masks and goggles and all of these things that people would need, garbage bags, paper towels, whatever it was. And we collected all this stuff. We brought it down there and we set up camp and we just handed these bags out to people. And they were bright yellow and bright green, like lime green. And, obviously it wasn't like we didn't have time to chat about Bog Bag. It was just like, hey, let's just hopefully this will help them. And we're going to give them some tools to go back into their home. And with that, I gave up. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I don't know where this is going to go from now. I don't have any more money to spend. I just wasted this money. I know I have no recourse with the factory, even though I did try.
Okay,
And
you did.
yeah. And so here we are. So I handed him out. My heart was full because I felt like we helped in a way. And I just went back to doing life. And I had a Facebook page set up at the time for these people to know where we were down there and what supplies we had. and kept up on it a little bit, like, like anniversary dates, or like, hey, like here's something that's going on that's, helpful for victims of Sandy. And about I don't know, 10 months to a year later, I started getting messages from all these people saying, like, where can I get more of these bags? This bag was the greatest bag I've ever had. Like, my friends and family want them. They're so jealous that I got one, and this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, it was one of those like, oh shit moments. Like, now I need to make this bag. Like, this is the consumer confidence that I needed, right? To really catapult this and catapult my thinking on how I'm going to bring Bogg Bag to the market. So it's not only just a beach bag, it's more than a beach bag. And with that, I said, you know what? I have to give it another try.
And these are the bags that had the marks on it. You're like, I can't sell these. Let me, Hurricane Sandy's in your community. Let me help people. Let me gift it. And then at that point, you're like, I don't have any money. I don't have any bags. I need to just pause the situation. And did you have purchase orders with different stores? Because I can't imagine also letting them down, like, hey, like we can't fulfill these orders. Did you have to also manage that aspect of everything?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that was awful, right? Because I didn't want to send them these bags either. We did have some remaining from the order that we had placed prior, that I ended up filling those orders. And then it was just kind of like we dropped off, but I kept the lines of communication open with the stores, told them what was going on, and just said, hey, I'm not sure what the state of Bogg Bag is going forward.
And your life also personally is getting impacted because of Hurricane Sandy. So I'm sure there's just so much that you're managing. And you mentioned, that you tried to get recourse from the factory. Is there any learnings that you have? Like, that was your first order. That's probably my biggest nightmare. You purchase a big order. That happened to me at a very small scale. Luckily, the business was not live yet. And I was like, okay, but I can't even imagine, right? You've sold purchase orders. You have customers. Any learnings that you have from that experience with manufacturing and just making sure things are kind of safe?
I think early on, I mean, we don't have an inspector go in. I mean, we run so much product now that we don't have independent inspectors go in, but I think it's cheap enough to have somebody go in there and check for you, because they can be your eyes and ears to see, is the manufacturing going away? Okay. Now, even when I did get inspectors after that, like sometimes like they'll go in, inspect, they'll pull product, and then the factory will just throw it right back into
Really? Oh
yeah.
gosh.
So but make sure your communications with your factory are good. Make sure your contracts are ironclad. And I never had a contract. I didn't have a contract with a factory until maybe the last couple of years. I've now been working with the same factory for 14 years. I think is it 14 years? No, I'm sorry, 10 plus years. I've been working with the same factory, not the original factory. What I did try to do though, is I did go to China, which was another huge expense that, we couldn't take on, and I wasn't going to go there by myself. So it was my husband and I that traveled to China. I went to the factory and I saw they had more of this product with the black streaks on it. And I was like, this is not going to work for me. And they were like, well, you have to take this before we give you any more product. And I'm like, no, you should replace the product that you sent me. You should have known you shouldn't have sent me that product. Right. So here I am, I'm arguing with them. And basically what we came to is, he said, well, if you don't take it, I'm going to sell it. And I threatened to burn his factory down, and I left. So
And he didn't sell it. What ended up happening?
I don't, they definitely ended up as I became more popular and the knockoffs started coming out, we did find out that they were part of the knockoff problem. So yeah, that not a good actor.
I've definitely heard stories like that. I had another friend, like on her honeymoon, somebody was like, her manufacturer in China was ripping off one of her products, and it was so obvious for many reasons. And they flew on the honeymoon and went there, and she's like, we busted the door open and was like, what are you doing? So it's like,
yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. It's like all these stories just are I'm sure not fun at the time, but to like look back, it's just like, I can't believe we went through all that and, you
Yeah.
made it okay.
Yeah. You
So
laugh about it now, but at the time
yeah,
it feels like your world is falling
I
apart.
would be so angry. I can't even imagine. And so when you guys were visiting factories, that was in 2013 when you were coming back with the product, when people were asking about it. Was that kind of the next phase of getting?
Well, they were asking about it before that because I would say that was probably in like 2012. And then in 2013, we went out there, realized that this factory was not going to work for us. We needed to part ways with them, take the loss, move on. And I was hoping that that was going to be the solution, was that they were going to do right by me and they were going to send us product and we could get back into business. But it didn't happen that way. So I had been in a mom's kind of Facebook group of people that had products. And I don't even remember how I found them or how this happened. I think it was somebody that I met at one of the trade shows and she turned me on to this group. And so I ended up talking to one of the girls and she was using a manufacturer in a different area of China for a cut and sew product, which is different than what we're doing. We're doing injection molding. So, but she was like, hey, reach out to him and just see. And that's the factory that I'm currently working with for 10 plus years. Yeah.
Amazing. And they've been able to scale with you over the years.
They have been able to scale with us. Yeah, for sure. But even, when I say about the contracts being important, he was giving me a price and I was accepting the price. But I really didn't know, and I negotiate everything to the death, but I really didn't have anything to compare it to. So he was giving me a price and I was paying it and it worked. What you start learning is, always keep your eyes and ears open and talk to other factories because there is some big pricing jumps between different factories. So now we're diversified, especially coming into this year, knowing that the tariffs were going to hit. We had worked on diversifying. So now we're not 100% with him. We're probably still about 70 and hoping to get to about 51 because he's in China and we have some better rates in Vietnam. So, but it's always keeping on those contracts and making sure that they're advantageous for you and not just the factory.
So biggest learnings, make sure you have a contract in place and then price breaks, like, whatever that is, and to shop around to see just how things are cost wise.
And even if you're not planning on moving, right? I'm a creature of habit. So I'm still with him, even though he's not the cheapest for us right now. But even if you can take that information that you're learning from other factories and use it to negotiate with your factory, right? It's all about saving money, right? You don't want to pay the highest amount for your product when you can get it cheaper somewhere else. But then also while keeping in mind, is the quality the same? Is, all these, there's so many different factors.
So you're finding the manufacturer. I'm sure money was still an issue. I believe you were still working. You didn't like officially quit. So this is still a side thing that over the years, you're working on, which I so appreciate. And from, other articles and podcasts, I think I read that you mentioned you auditioned for Shark Tank 4 times.
Yes.
Is that true? So tell me more, because I'm sure you were looking to raise money. So how was that experience? Because you just kept going back, which again shows the power of your resilience, which I just think is like incredible to talk about.
Yeah. So I was still working and, I didn't have the money to move forward. And I would talk to people at work about it, but not so much. It was almost kind of like taboo. Like they didn't want me to talk about it. I wasn't doing it on their dime or on their time. But, I was talking to one of my bosses one time and he's like, well, maybe I'll invest in you. Cause I said, I don't have any money to get this off the ground the second time. I've spent all my money and I'm not willing to take out more loans and do all this, but I really think there's something here. And he believed in me, but he also, while believing in me, wanted to bring in Morgan Stanley. And I'm like, I don't have a business plan. I don't even know what a business plan is. I don't have financials. I can't definitively tell you you're going to get paid back. So we worked on this for like a really long time talking about it. And then one of the other guys that I had worked with for at that time, I don't know, probably 15 plus years, he's like, you know what? Maybe me and my wife will do this. My wife, has a couple dollars and like maybe she'd be interested in this. And So I said, okay. I said, I'll meet with her and tell her. I said, but again, I don't have a business plan. And they trusted enough in me to lend or go into the business. And it was a small amount. It was 120,000. I wasn't trying to raise like these huge numbers, right? I just needed to get my next order in and start selling again. So I did a contract with them. And they
Was
got
it a
an
loan or did you give them
it was an
equity?
equity position, right? I mean, I didn't know if I was going to make a dollar at this point. So like the equity was, maybe it was too much for the amount of money, but at the time it was just like I just needed to get going. So I don't regret that at all, making that decision. And it did. It gave me the jump to move forward, to be able to place my first order, to go back to the trade shows. And at that point, I had been gone for a while, even though we were selling a little bit here and there. It really became like brand new to everybody. So it gave me that time to kind of reset and see what I really wanted to do. So we started hitting the trade shows. The response was overwhelming. So that was in like 15 by the time we negotiated with the factory, got the product in, started doing the trade shows in like 14 to kind of like introduce it with samples and start getting some purchase orders against it. And at that time, I would share a booth with like from the same moms group with 4 or 5 other women. So, these booths are $10,000 and you didn't know if you were going to sell one thing or 100 things or, if you weren't going to see a person the entire time. So it was great to some of us would share a room. So there'd be 3 girls that didn't know each other sharing a room and then working in the booth side by side, selling our products. So it actually was a lot of fun. And you got to learn a lot about different areas, because, I was from Jersey, but one girl was from Michigan and one was from California and one was from Florida and Georgia. So it was really cool. And we were all different ages and different stages of life. And the orders started coming in. So 15 was decent. 16 got better, 17 got even better, and then 18 it became too much. It was literally me. My husband would help, my kids would help, but they were both in school. My husband worked 12-hour shifts, and I put a call out to my son. I said, "Hey, I need some warehouse help. I'm moving boxes myself. I'm unloading trucks myself. I'm plunging the toilet myself." Like I had moved into a little bit bigger of a warehouse just to make room for this product. And the only person that responded in his whole friend group list was the tiniest little girl you've ever seen, Julie. So I would go to work all day. Julie would go to school and we would meet at the warehouse at night and we would unload, pack, invoice, call. We would do all of that stuff until whatever time at night. And then I would go home and do it all the next day. Julie's still with me here.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, she's phenomenal, and she's actually my son's girlfriend now too. So,
Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
and they've been together for several years. So, but she's my little hustler, and she's been fantastic. But yeah, so Julie and I did it, and then in 18, it got to be too much. My kids were super active in sports. And like, I didn't want to miss all of these moments too. So I was trying to fit in everything, right? I wanted to go to sports games. I wanted to take a vacation with my kids. I wanted time to do things. I needed to work and I needed to get Bogg Bag off the ground. So it was finding that balance. And in July of 2018, I gave my notice. I didn't end up leaving until October, just getting somebody ready for the position. But I made up a number that year and I'm like, still making up numbers so many years later. I'm like, I need to sell $1 million worth of product this year to make it worth it to leave my job. And I cut myself short because I thought I was leaving in July and I didn't leave till October. So now I'm like really hustling and I squeaked it out. Like I sold $1 million in product that year. And I was like, okay, we're moving along. 19 got even better and until COVID. And then COVID hit and I'm like, oh my God, like, it's like almost like, can you get a break? Like at this point? But what COVID did was we grew over COVID and we were very heavy wholesale. We still didn't really run the e-com business. We were wholesale heavy.
Through trade shows still. Like you said, you were growing year over year. Trade shows was like the jam.
That
And
was my marketing. That was my selling. That was where I was going to see the most amount of people. And we started reaching out to our stores and saying, how can we help? Like I wasn't worried about me going under. I was more worried about like these small businesses struggle so much. And now like, can they be open? Can they have their employees come to work? Like, how was this all going to work? So we would start talking to them and we're like, what do you need? And they're like, well, I have so much, product and inventory in my back shelf and I can't even get it out to sell it. And they started using Bogg Bag as the vehicle to make Easter baskets because we couldn't get out to the store. You couldn't, I mean, Easter is a huge like selling season and they couldn't even go out to the store to buy Easter baskets. So they would take stuff that was on their shelves, they would put it into a Bogg Bag, wrap it all nice, and they would do like either curbside pickup or delivery. And I loved the enthusiasm out of the stores. Like I was so inspired by it. Like, how do we help them keep their lights on? And so they started getting busier. And then more stores started seeing what they were doing because I was doing social media myself. So I would be like, oh my gosh, do you need an Easter basket? Go to Under the Carolina Moon in Easley, South Carolina. And, an angel there will help you. And like, so I was talking about our stores and they were in turn talking about us. And it started building up this momentum. And then hospitals and schools were calling us because of the washability of Bogg Bag. So we started growing during this time where I didn't know if I can get product again because it was COVID and China was shut down. So we were selling the product that we had while building up this fan base. And then Peloton moms started using Bogg Bag to put all their stuff in. And so we went viral. That was the first time we went viral. It just got crazy from there.
And were you always doing social media? Or was this like COVID? You're like, I need to get out there. Let me
No, I
start.
always did the social media.
You
Yeah.
always did. And when did you start it? Like, how early were you sharing about it?
Early. I think I have posts like 2012, 2013, like anytime that I could put a Bogg Bag in a position where I could show it in a place I was at, or I could show how I was using it, I would do it. So,
So
and
for years, you were over a decade, you're on social media. And then you had your viral moment much later because of COVID and everything.
And I didn't even know about it. Somebody told me I clearly I didn't have time to ride the Peloton. So like I didn't know about it. One of my friends told me, they're like, you're all over Peloton moms. Like the post is going viral. And I'm like, oh wow, that's very cool. I didn't even understand like the effect of it at that time. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to show real people using Bogg Bag. I didn't want it to be models. I wanted real people on the beach using Bogg Bag every day, bringing it to the sports field, bringing it to the market. I just wanted to show UGC. I didn't spend $1 on advertising until 2024, not $1.
It was all word of mouth and retail, the stores that you had connections with. Did you have direct to consumer at the time or selling online?
We were slowly building up direct to consumer and learning how, like, I didn't even have images, right? So all of my images were UGC images or me just taking pictures with my phone.
Incredible.
And those worked. Those worked because I think people like the realness. It's not an over processed photo of some amazing person using the bag, right? So we had to build up the D2C platform, and and we ended up doing it. And even that until 2023, it was pretty damn awful. I mean, because I was kind of building it out myself, so it was to the best of my ability.
That's huge. And then you don't have to share these numbers, but if you don't want to, but by 2023, like even before ads, how big was the company at that time?
So in 2023, we had grown to 50 million.
50 million. So through word of mouth, through going to trade shows. I mean, that's incredible. And obviously having a unique product. And, again, like it doesn't happen overnight. You were working on this for like almost 2 decades at the time, right? That's just incredible. And this is a question just kind of going back to that one number that you had, like, I want to quit my full-time job when we hit 1 million in revenue, and you just hit that. Did you pay yourself that early on? Was that like what was really driving your number, or how was that? Or did you take a pay cut?
I didn't pay myself until the end of 2018 when I did all of the numbers and did my half-ass accounting and figured out what was left at the end of the day. And my biggest goal was to, even though, and maybe that was some of the things that I didn't know, but like, even though it was an equity position deal, like my biggest goal was to pay back that 120,000 before I touched any money.
Sure.
So, I made a very, very small amount. I think the first time I actually, when I say made some money, I still wasn't paying myself back for all of the back stuff. But the first time I made any money in it was 2019.
2008. And you still had the debt that you were servicing from like the first round of the business, or did you manage that through taking the time off and when you had your full-time job?
I just, it was just gone. It was just gone. And, it would have to be rebuilt over when I was able to make any money from the business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And gosh, what an incredible journey. And
Oh, I'm sorry. You said debt. You said
debt,
debt. So
yeah, the debt.
I didn't go into 2018 with debt. Anything that I had remaining from that, I would just pay over those couple of years where I wasn't, really actively doing it. And then I would just pay those things off because I didn't want to have anything over my head.
And how much would you say what like the first part of Boggs where, it didn't work out, you took this debt, everything that you were sharing early on, like how much in debt were you, or how much of your money did you invest at the time?
Well over 100,000.
That's incredible. So, okay. I always love that because some people think like you quit your job, you're making just as much money as your other job. And I'm like, it doesn't always work like that. Like you're paying other people, you're paying people back, you're bringing on someone on the team. You're kind of like the last person. But you're so like motivated to get it across the finish line and build a business where, sometimes it's okay to kind of take the step back. And, so it seems like things are really growing. 2020 ended up being an incredible year. At what point did you get into the larger retailers like the Dick's, the Target, the Nordstrom, the Bloomingdale's? Like that, those are a lot of larger brands to get into.
So the first major retailer we went into was Dillard's, and I actually had them on hold I was telling them no because I
They
just
reached out to you. Mm-hmm.
they had reached out. Yeah, it was probably through one of the trade shows. I'd probably met with them. But coming out of COVID, which is important, like we had a 2-year backlog because as I started talking more about the stores and the stores were seeing like the support that they were giving to them, more and more people wanted to carry Bogg bags. So I was getting this like almost like this grassroots movement of, hey, like maybe I need to carry Bogg bag now too. So I had a list of stores, a mile long, and it was like we need to fill all of these orders before we take on new stores. So somewhere in that mix, Dillard's came into it, and I met with them because you meet with everybody and you just hear what everybody has to say. But I didn't have the room to bring in product into my warehouse to then turn it around to Dillard's. So basically what I told them is you have to order a full container and it has to come to you.
Sure. I love that.
Right. So like I will say one of the things I also say a lot is one of the greatest things about not knowing anything is that you can just say anything. Right. So this was my pitched to them and they ended up biting. We didn't do it right away, but we ended up moving down the road a little bit. They ended up bringing in full containers of product. So, and it was like, well, how do you get paid for that? So I'm thinking to myself, like, well, if I'm going to lay out the money, like I need a deposit. So I would ask for a 50% deposit, which is not common in larger retail. Like that doesn't happen often, but it was the only thing I knew at the time. And I needed the money to be able to put my deposit down. So it worked out.
And they wanted the product that bad where it's like they were willing to negotiate to that 50% because you never hear that. I mean, typically when people get into retail, that's when they really need to raise money. And, I don't know if it's still accurate that you were trying to get on Shark Tank, but like, were you trying to do that? And did you raise money with the growth of this business? Did you need that or you managed it yourself?
Through those earlier years, I was managing it myself. The Shark Tank thing was actually, I always wondered who am I going to pick? Like I couldn't hone in on one person that would be the perfect partner for me. So really it was more about the experience. I wanted to experience everything I possibly could. And I just thought it would be more of a driver for the brand, right? Like people sell out when you go on Shark Tank. But yeah, I was in the finals 4 times and never made it to the actual show. But it used to scare me because Mr. Wonderful used to always say on all the Shark Tanks, like, you're not passionate about your product or your brand if you don't quit your job. And I will still say this to this day. I think it's irresponsible information, right? Because you can do both. I mean, I was older and did both. So if you're younger, you can definitely do both. Like do as much as you can so that you're comfortable. Like it's got to be scary leaving a job, having zero income and being in the early stages of your business. Like it's got to be scary. So do as much as you can at the same time until you get that comfort level where you can jump off. Like, why would I put my family at risk to just quit my job and focus on Bogg Bag? Could it have worked? Yes, but I like it much better this way. Yeah, so I never made it on there. I ended up being approached in 2020, late 2022, 2023 from a publicly traded company, very well known in a similar space, and the deal was outrageous. If I had met my goals, it would have been north of $100 million on this deal, and
That you would sell, or no, in terms of the fundraise that
I
they
would
would,
have made.
that you would have made. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, that I would have walked away with at the end of all of it. But it was a majority. I would have had a small percentage in it that there was a buyout portion later, but it was an awful lot of money. And it's like, oh, like what do you do? I hemmed and hawed with it. I met with these people a lot. I really like the people, but I had to look at like what kind of value is it going to bring me, and am I ready to, give up my baby? And it ended up that after over a year of due diligence and all these things, we ended up parting ways. And I was sick to my stomach because I was like, I just gave up $100 million. Like, that's a lot of money. But once you start getting into it and it becomes like so much more than just this small thing that you started so long ago, it kind of becomes less about the money and more about the people and like all the experiences, right? So even though I was sick to my stomach over it, all things lead to something better, right? So I ended up meeting another group, which was private, not publicly traded, and was in the fashion world. And randomly through the connection is random through Post Malone.
I love this.
It was so crazy. It was such a crazy, crazy story. When I first got the call, and I'll take every call, and I was like, wait, what? You're who? Like, it wasn't Post himself, but it was somebody from Post's team. And it just ended up being the craziest thing. And now these are the guys that would end up coming in 23. I maintain control of the business, which was important to me. It wasn't a big money transaction. It was more of a gut and and it wasn't only because I had the gentleman and his wife, that in order for them to come in and not dilute me so much that I wouldn't, have that control, we had to pay them out. So they did very, very well.
They
And
got paid out. So they're no longer equity holders.
correct.
They sold their equity. Okay.
Yeah. So it ended up that they were out and I was, maintained. I had been 75%. So I was diluted, but enough to keep me in control. But I had this wealth of knowledge, surrounding me that I couldn't pay for. So that's been wonderful.
Got it. So the reason why you felt more comfortable, few things, you're still majority, they're minority, and the wealth of information and knowledge that they have in this space is a value add to you.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't have processes. In 2023, we were still taking orders on pen and paper. I had no ERP. I didn't have an ordering system. We didn't have anything. And sometimes I do want to go back to it because it was so much simpler then.
Sure, sure.
But, it's what I needed with infrastructure. And I didn't think the prior deal was going to give me the infrastructure that I needed. I thought the people were great. I knew I had the right product, but was that infrastructure going to be there for me? And that's what they've really helped with.
Oh my gosh, I love all this. I have so many thoughts. Like even the first one being, you could have walked away with $100 million, but people who are at least in my world, and it might be a small world of, incredible women like you who I get to meet and have these big businesses. It's like they could sell their companies, they could easily cash out, live their life, not go through the stress of being a business owner. Even if you're at 100, 200, 300, $400 million company, like you still deal with the crap as like the owner and CEO, but you're in it for the love and the game. And like you said, like the experiences, the team that you have, the people you meet, the growth that you continue to have as a person, right? Through all these experiences. So, people always think it's about money, but I truly think like to build something incredible, there needs to be more than that, or else like you don't even get to these levels, I think. So I just thought that was just so incredible. So thank you for just being so transparent about that. I feel like that will help a lot of people for sure.
Oh yeah, and and you're absolutely right. It's not. I mean, the first million, like I need to sell $1 million. Like that's like a milestone. But then it just kind of, and then obviously you want to grow and you want to grow to the biggest that you possibly can. Like I am not done yet. Like I want to build this to, at least $500 million, if not $1 billion. I mean, I want to be sitting up there with one of the, with other brands that live in that space, but not for me, for like the team, for the product, for, all of these things. You got to have a love for it.
And I love that you built the company to the scale it was, like over 50, over 100 million, without the fancy ERP systems. And, because I think sometimes people can get really fixated early on, like before you even make a million or two or three, about like getting all the fancy stuff and the perfect branding and the perfect this. And it's like, focus on the product and like getting it out there and making money and, making sure your customers are happy. And I love that you did that for so long without all the quote unquote fancy things that sometimes people think they need to invest all their money in.
Sure. I still don't think you need to invest in all those things, super fast. Like they're very complicated, and it's not my world, so I don't know it. But sometimes the systems are crazy. But we have them all now, and thankfully everybody else knows how to use them because I certainly don't all the time. And of course, I have a working knowledge, but
Sure. But like, you're not the expert, nor should you be. Like, that's when you should bring a team. And, I know we're coming up on time. Last question I have, there, clearly has been so many competitors in this space. Any advice? You were the leader, the first kind of innovator. How have you dealt with maintaining your market share while having competitors, I'm sure, continuously coming into the space?
It happens so often that it's almost crazy. Of course, in the beginning when it was happening few and far between, and everybody's like, oh, well, imitation is the biggest form of flattery. And, like I now hate that saying because I don't want it. But yeah, it's just what makes me heartsick is like other brands, that you've respected, that now come out and try to make a Bogg bag because they see the popularity and they see our reach. So, in the beginning, maybe it was a little more flattering, but now it's just kind of like ridiculous. Like everybody's trying to make a Bogg bag and they're trying to, it's so, maybe they're changing something slightly, but we do have good protection. So I think that, honestly, I probably would have, if I had done it over again, I would have gone to market first because there is, and I wouldn't have wasted the money on a patent. I would have used that for product. And, I just, patents are very subjective and everybody can look up your patent and they can look at my patent. They could say, well, if I change this around, then I'm going to skirt the patent. So I would have gone to market first. Because later down the road, when you do get, like, we have trade dress protection, which has been way more valuable for us. That's the overall look and appearance of the product that's nationally recognized, right?
Trade dress. Is that like a patent or a trademark, a trade dress?
It's more like trademark, but it's called trade
Oh,
dress.
nice. Okay.
So it's there's a lot of case law on it, but it's the overall look and appearance. And it's not easy to get protection for, and my lawyer would kill me because I probably don't explain it right, but we did get granted that protection. So we've used that a lot in combating a lot of the knockoffs, and we've been extremely successful. So I think that's good. As far as the patents, I don't even use the patent in the protection when I go after people. So it's there, and I have 4 patents. I have 2 design and 2 utility, but the trade dress for us has been more important. And it is what it is. I've kind of gotten used to it. I see it every day. Another brand, another store is bringing out a product. And especially in the summer, and even more than that, what I hate more is the scam sites that'll take our images, put them up there, and just steal people's money like that. makes me so, so angry. And the fact that we don't have something in place where we can get these websites shut down in 5 minutes, like they're stealing people's money. So then I feel responsible as the owner of Bogg Bag that you're actually just trying to go and order a Bogg Bag and somebody's stealing your money. So like those are the things that upset me more than the knockoffs itself.
And you're able, I know, it feels like once you get to scale, you just hear these stories of like people, taking your image or putting you on Amazon when you're not on Amazon and your customers think it's real. Like,
I've had it all.
oh my gosh, I'm sure your lawyers are very busy.
Oh my goodness. Yes, they are. They are. But hopefully, I mean, the summer months are the worst for us, but that's when the scammers will come out. And then you have the rogue people. What happened is, they were selling so many knockoffs on Temu. And Temu was doing advertisements saying it was Bogg Bag, and people were going on there and buying it and I mean, they weren't even getting bags half the time. It was like, sometimes it was a cardboard bag or like, like off a hard plastic bag. It was terrible. And we actually were successful in getting Temu shut down as it relates to Bogg Bags. But what happened is Temu had contracted so many factories in China to produce these bags for them because they were getting so many orders, and all of these factories now had all of these bags that were lesser quality Bogg. So they started reaching out to the mom on Facebook and saying, hey, you can sell these on your Facebook page and we'll ship them out for you. And that's where a lot of the knockoffs came from. So
Got it. But taking Temu down, do you have protection internationally as well?
that one I can't really, I wouldn't say the right thing. So I don't know how to
Yeah, no,
respond to
no
that.
worries.
But we are registered in multiple countries.
Okay, but you were able to figure it out at least to take them down. But the other manufacturers that they worked with still had product and reach out
Right.
to people.
Right.
So
To the
okay,
point where some of them knocked on our door in New Jersey, flew in from China, and they're like, can you please take our product? Because Timu ordered all this product and now they canceled our orders and we're sitting with all this product. We're like, no, it's a knockoff. I'm not taking your
oh
product.
my gosh,
So
oh
yeah,
my
the
gosh.
stories are crazy.
Oh my God. Well, Kim, I feel like I could talk to you for like 5 hours. I'm so glad you're writing this book. Like, do you have an ETA? Is it in process? I feel like there's so
I
many stories
am
you could share.
75 to 80% done.
Oh,
So it's
great.
just a matter of literally, I wrote it in 4 days, the 75%.
Wow.
So it's just a matter of me getting the energy to finish it up.
Oh
But
my gosh.
it'll be
Well,
fun.
in addition to the book, like what else is getting you excited, whether it's with the business or the book or just personally, like in this next kind of phase for you?
Telling the story, empowering women to do the same and speaking and telling my story.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so glad you're out there telling your story. So real, so relatable, like making it feel like anything's possible with hard work, time, patience. But no, this was so incredible, Kim. Thank you for joining us today and just being so real. And, we're definitely cheering you on and cannot wait to get your book. So excited about that.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.